Audiobook Evolution presents The Grand Faith, read to you by Audiobook Evolution. Enjoy! Poop is an essential part of human life. Without it, our bodies would surely die. Unfortunately, many people find it a disgusting and dirty process not worthy of civilized conversation. Well, it's time to change all that. Has anyone ever told you to eat shit? While in the past this might have been considered an insult, in reality they are actually wishing you good fortune and happiness. Eating fecal matter can not only strengthen your soul, but it can also make you a devil in the sack. There is nothing more arousing than a sexual partner who's willing to expose the inside of their body to you. I love poop for many reasons, but mostly for its texture. There are virtually unlimited amounts of variation to be had. Some look like dimes, some logs, while others a combination of mud and peanuts. Have you ever wanted to include poop in your diet but were too afraid of what society might think? Well, fear not, because poop is very compact and easy to keep out of sight. Simply take a wooden box to defecate in and then hide it beneath your bed. Make sure you spray an odor eliminator to keep others from smelling your food. After all, one must be protective of this precious resource. However, the consumption of fecal matter is not the only thing one must do to achieve mastery of the bowels. We must also worship the fruits of our anus by subscribing to the Grand Faith. The Grand Faith is no different from any other religious organization protected under our Constitution. Founded last year by professional vagabond and activist Fred A. Fuchs, the Grand Faith possesses a rich and rewarding mythology that is sure to impress your friends and colleagues alike. Fuchs tells us that in the beginning there lived a race of people who were in perfect harmony with nature. The people lived off their bowels and only used what came out of their bodies as nourishment. Soon a landscape of poop houses and yellow rivers emerged from the desert floor. However, neighboring tribes grew jealous of their golden brown town and attacked, taking the people by surprise. Sadly, most of the town was destroyed, leaving only a few survivors. With a heavy heart, those that were left alive underwent the monumental task of rebuilding all the shit they had lost. Among the survivors were two brothers, Shiznit and Constipatio. Shiznit had always been popular because of his kindness and sagacity, while Constipatio was considered to be rowdy and barbaric, often tossing his poo indiscriminately at bystanders and then rubbing it in their hair. Many villagers would complain about Constipatio to Shiznit, but Shiznit would always defend his brother's honor. One day, while doing chores, the two got into an argument. "I bet my poopy can clog the river," boasted Constipatio. "Nonsense," replied Shiznit. "Everyone knows your anus only makes dimes and nickels." Although Constipatio knew in his heart this was true, his jealousy prevailed, and so he issued a challenge. "Very well," said Constipatio. "If you are so great, then you shall dam this river by dumping the contents of your ass into its placid waters." Shiznit agreed, eager to put his brother's boasting aside and get back to rebuilding shit. That night, each man ate a feast that could choke 1,000 goats. Pastas, breads, prunes, and heavy creams were all on the menu. As dawn broke the next day, Shiznit and Constipatio met each other at the widest river they could find. Their colons full to the brim, they flipped a coin to see who would go first. "Now watch as I steal your glory," bellowed Constipatio when the coin landed. It would be he who would go first. Constipatio's face reddened like a tomato as he squeezed out tiny poopy pebbles from his buttocks and slowly filled the river until the water ceased to flow. "Ha!" shouted Constipatio. "Let's see you beat that, brother." Although Shiznit was impressed by this display, he was still confident of victory. Shiznit stood in the water and closed his eyes. With one mighty push, an avalanche of fecal matter escaped his anus and raised him upward. Constipatio's eyes widened as he watched his brother ascend to the heavens on a mountain of poo. The river had never seen so much congestion before or even since. Fuchs theorizes that this is how the state of New Jersey was formed. Shiznit hopped off the mountain to console his brother, but before they could speak, the poo interrupted with a booming voice.
"Shiznit, the amount of fecal matter you've wrought today is a testament to all who have shit before and all who have yet to shit. Never before has a man unleashed such a massive dump upon the world. You are the chosen one. You are the anal Messiah."
"Thank you for your kind words," said Shiznit, bowing his head in respect to the giant.
No, it is I who should thank you. You are my creator, my father and mother, my leader and lord, and I'm here to give you all the shit I can offer.
Meanwhile, though, while Shiznit spoke to his Pooh, Constipatio sat in silent anguish, tears streaming from his eyes. Not only had he failed to out-Pooh his brother, but now there was a living pile of crap talking about an anal messiah. It was a very bad day indeed. The well of envy that Constipatio held in his heart began to burn like a butthole after a night of explosive diarrhea. He would have his revenge for this humiliation by any means necessary. When Shiznit arrived back at the village, he was greeted by a jubilant crowd. There were songs and festivities, and people eagerly squatted before him and shat in his path, a sign of great respect that continues to be an important part of our faith. Despite his overwhelming victory against Constipatio, Shiznit let his brother march at his side during the festival. Little did Shiznit know that his brother's sadness had quietly turned to rage. As dawn broke on the village, the celebrations finally ended, and the people returned to their homes to rest. It was a brave new world, full of brave new shit. But as the village lay sleeping, Constipatio remained awake. Days began to pass without a word from him. While Shiznit was concerned about his brother's absence, he knew that the giant Pooh required great attention. Each day, Shiznit would visit the giant mass at the river, and the two would discuss the finer points of taking a shit. They also discussed ways to honor and improve the sacred act of anal evacuation. Shiznit wrote down these conversations and began to compile them in a giant tome known as the Brown Bible, which today is the very bedrock of our faith. Shiznit came to love and appreciate his creation, naming his new friend Patterson. Meanwhile, Constipatio remained in his hut, plotting revenge. In the darkness and isolation, the man had no other audience than the stoic silence of the unmoving walls, walls that could not protest all the verbal diarrhea he was about to spew. To be alone is miserable. If I am not the anal messiah, then what am I? All men want to feel irreplaceable. Even the lowliest beggar fits into the puzzle of life if enough people laugh at his misery. But I don't even have that. Is it my fate to be simply flushed away? Am I so low that I'm not even worthy of ridicule? Does no one give a shit about me? A smile slowly formed on Constipatio's lips. Well then, if I cannot have Dookie, then no one will! The smile then began to boil over into a haughty laugh, his lungs aching with the mad pleasure of it. They will squeeze and squeeze, but no brown treasure will snake from their assholes. Their faces shall redden, veins will explode from their foreheads, and yet they will never know the soothing touch of cool water splashing onto their bungholes as a load of excrement plops into the toilet below. Yes, this will be my sole delight, being the contrary to Shiznit's will, which I shall constipate. It was a dark day in world history. For the first time ever, there existed a force which sought to block the flow of Pooh from traveling down the holy chute of glory. Alas, though, this is only half of Constipatio's diabolical plan. Gathering up his collection of rare beans, he placed them in an earthen jar and sealed the concoction for several days until it fermented. On the 6th day, Constipatio opened the jar and fed upon its contents, his devious smile never fading. After spending so many weeks in isolation, he parted the door of his tent and peered outside. The sun gently glided below a violet horizon, its rays of golden light abandoning the streets and buildings, the blackness of night entrenching itself onto the village. Constipatio knew where his brother would be, and he would pay him a visit. Shiznit entered his tent near dusk, just as he always did. His children, Eurynotus and Bedeia, greeted their father at the door by sending a rocket of shit into their pants. "Dinner is ready!" they cheered in unison. Shiznit smiled, bending down to embrace his two small children. Oh, how proud your mother, the lovely Poopina Stinkola, would be if she was still alive today and had not perished when our village was attacked so many years ago. Eurynotus, my son, your shit is mighty like the oak, tall,
proud, and yet still able to offer shade to those that need it. Medea, my daughter, your hair's like a golden shower of loveliness, and your shit is swift and quick like a gazelle. I'm truly blessed to be your father, and now that my shittiness has finally turned a profit, I can finally retire. Starting tomorrow, you will never have to be alone again." Eurynotus and Medea were ecstatic at this news, tackling their father to the ground. Shiznit laughed and wrestled with his children until they were all covered in buttery, delicious poo. Unbeknownst to Shiznit, however, an asshole was slowly inching its way towards his head. Closer and closer it came, until the tiny hairs on its round, supple form nearly touched the back of Shiznit's neck. "Sic semper tyrannus!" shouted Constipatio. Death to tyrants. An ass cannon of noxious gas swirled from Constipatio and hit his brother like a tornado. The gas entered his brother's lungs and began to melt his innards like ice cream. Aware of what was happening to him, Shiznit clutched his children close to prevent them from breathing in the nuclear fart that was eating away at his body. As Shiznit's eyes rolled back in his head, he caught Constipatio smiling down at him with sadistic pleasure. This type of attack would later be known to history as an assassination. However, Constipatio's victory was not total. Although the ass attack had incapacitated his brother, the sound, force, and smell of it awoke much of the village. Fearing something was wrong, some rushed towards Shiznit's hut to provide aid. When the villagers entered the tent, they were greeted with a horrific sight. "You're too late," Constipatio sneered. "Your hero is dead, and soon you will join him." Constipatio began to pucker his anus for another blast, but the villagers bum-rushed the fiend and forced him down where the discharge was plugged by the ground. Still, the explosion shook the earth around them, allowing Constipatio to slip from their collective grasp. Using the last bit of fart juice left in his body, he propelled himself up over the heads of the crowd and towards the door. "Fools!" he shouted in defiance. "You haven't heard the last of me." With that, Constipatio ran into the night. The large smoking hole burned into the back of his pants, trailing off into the moonlit darkness with him. "What are you doing?" demanded a village elder. "Go after him!" The younger men of the group immediately gave chase, following the smoky trail of Constipatio's red-hot anus. One of the elders, a man called Kofifi, gently lifted Shiznit's children off of him, their tears and desperate blood-curdling cries sending chills throughout the tent. Thankfully, Kofifi was a calm and collected fellow who knew how to deal with a sticky situation. An expert in scatological medicine, Kofifi had come to the village seeking refuge after he was chased from his home by the bigoted residents who discovered he was hoarding shit. Although it pained him to see Shiznit lying helplessly on the floor, Kofifi knew that it was his duty to administer aid. When Kofifi pressed his ear to Shiznit's stomach, he heard a familiar gurgle. "I can hear bowel movement!" he exclaimed. "Our Messiah lives!" The group seemed to calm slightly at this news, but tensions remained high. Eurynotus' cry broke the terrible silence. "Take my father to Patterson! It's the only way to save him!" Kofifi eyed the boy for a moment and contemplated the idea of taking Shiznit to a giant talking pile of poo to save him from a toxic fart which came from his evil brother who had just declared himself to be the patron saint of constipation. And so it was that Kofifi and the rest of the group, including Shiznit's children, carried their hero to the river where Patterson resided. With tears that seemed to urinate from their eyes, Kofifi explained the situation. "I have but one way to save him. I must combine my dookie with his dookie, so we can become the ultimate piece of shite."
"But what will happen to my daddy?" asked Medea in her chipmunk voice. "Will we ever be able to see him again?"
"He will always be in your anus. His sacrifice will ensure that Constipatio will never win. However, you must always be vigilant and give a shit each day so that Constipatio does not take hold of your arsehole."
With that, Patterson reached out and enveloped Shiznit in a comforting tide of fecal matter. As his body began to disappear from sight, Shiznit opened his eyes, smiling at his friends and family one last time. Patterson then carefully lifted the human-shaped cocoon of divine shit into the air, letting the sun highlight its brown glory for one beautiful moment. Suddenly, a giant vortex opened in the sky like a spreading anus, dispersing the clouds around it. Patterson flowed into the vortex as if he was being sipped through a straw, his liquefied form reflecting the river of his birth. The giant asshole slowly began to close, but just before its cheeks became fully united, it exploded in a fireworks display of golden brown. Then, as if Shiznit himself was standing beside them, a gentle pitter-patter of dingleberries began to rain over the land in a glorious sunshower. For 6 days and 5 nights, the people feasted off this bounty, which is still celebrated today on a day known as the Ascension. Although the exact date of this event is a controversial subject among the faithful, it is commonly believed that the Ascension originally occurred at 2:14 a.m. on August 29th. The Grand Faith is an all-inclusive religion. We do not discriminate between rich and poor, black and white, or male and female. That's right, even if you self-identify as a non-cisgendered attack helicopter, you are welcome to join us. A pilgrimage to Paterson, New Jersey at least once in your life is expected so you can experience all this shit with us. Our grand headquarters, the Church of the Holy Anus, is located on Governor Street between the Firehouse and the Crack Den. For more information, please visit our website at www.analenlightenment.org/The Grand Faith. We look forward to seeing you. But before you go, however, we would like to leave you with this, our most holy prayer. Bless us, O Shiznit, and these, thy shits, which we are about to receive from thy anus. Deliver us from constipation, so that we may give you our daily poo. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of indigestion, I will fear no blockage, for thy anus is with me, and will comfort me. Thy asshole come, thy poo be done. Aw, shit.